Will Tim waltz to Washington? UK riots on cue for Keir. Markets melt down and bounce back again? Those stories and more. The Monica Perez Show starts now. Hey, y'all. Thanks for showing up. If you are listening on your favorite podcasting platform and you don't like the commercials, go ahead and become a premium subscriber on iTunes, and that will support me and it'll help you out. I don't like the commercials either, but they pay for my trusty producer. So another person who loves the show and is supportive of the show, our buddy Chris at True Hemp Science, has asked us to vote for True Hemp Science to be the best CBD store in Austin, and I'm certain it is. So if you want to vote, it's at vote.austinfitmagazine.com/lifestyle/best-cbd-shop. I am putting that link in the show notes at Monica Perez Show. And they actually will probably be in the show notes right under this episode in the iTunes also. And today, this is going to be my only newsreel of the week. On Thursday, I'm going to read another section of the Octopus story, the Octopus book about Danny Casolaro. People love it. Normally I do newsreels on Thursdays, but it's my son's last day home of the summer and he needs help. And I want to get my priorities right, but then I won't have as many obligations. So I will be back with newsreels next week after this one. But this one, man, I should do more, not less, because just so many things are happening around the world right now. So many things, from Bangladesh, the UK, to Northern Ireland, Australia, Iran. I mean, Niger, Mali. I mean, it's out of control. And it's hard to keep up on the stuff that's foreign because we're not there in person and we can't verify this stuff on the ground. We don't know the different news sources. So I wanted to look into the riots that are happening in the UK or that are being reported from the UK. I found a couple of great sources. That Miri AF, I don't know if she's super popular there or what, but man, she tells it like it is. Like I would say she is not a fed. Let's just put it that way. Another source I really like, very professional, is Off Guardian, where even Ian Davis works. I'll have to talk to him again soon. And one of the authors there, Kit Knightley, wrote a lot about the riots and everything and what was causing them. Those guys both had similar takes on this, and it was very much what, from afar, it looked like was happening, in my opinion. So let me tell you a little bit about it, because it's getting a lot of press and it's definitely going to lead to it's meant to lead to some policies over there that we wouldn't like over here. And this world is becoming the globe is becoming smaller. So what happens in different places does affect us, especially our Five Eyes brethren, the Commonwealth, the UK, which includes Canada and Australia. So it's not a stretch to think that we're all headed in the same direction. And I'll tell you more about why I think we are. All right. So reports of all this rioting, it seemed to me there was a lot of fear mongering. That's what Miri said when she went to, when they gave warnings, like, don't go to the town center. It's terrible, whatever. Scotland, I just saw a report today that said, even though we haven't experienced riots in Scotland, we're telling everyone to be really freaked out. We're ramping up police stuff. We're staging that, separately, but I'm sure it's equally astroturf, counter demonstrations in opposition to the riots that happen not in our country. So the upshot is all of it is basically surrounding the idea that white working class men are really pissed about immigration, brown people, Muslims. And this was going on with Rishi Sunak. So Keir Starmer is the new prime minister in England, in the UK. He took over July 5th. Rishi Sunak, who I've covered many times, he he was criticized in the run up to the election for creating an immigration disaster. Same thing as Kamala Harris. And I think that was a setup to make this story plausible. So this story, I don't even think is true, but they're making it plausible. They're saying people are so fed up with the immigration. They've got these people are rioting because of that, because they're so basically they're racist assholes is the idea. But what happened, so there were a whole bunch of different incidents, and they obviously were trying to pump this up for a while. So I had like a little timeline here. Keir took office July 5th. This is all unrolling for him, in my opinion. There were a bunch of riots in Whitechapel. Now, this isn't the same thing as like getting white guys to be mad about Muslims. This is about it supposedly was sparked over anger of what's happening in Bangladesh. And I think what's happening in Bangladesh is totally unrelated. And I'll tell you what I think's going on there. Maybe not totally, but they're just exploiting that for more anti-globalist stuff, which obviously I'm not a globalist, but I see that's what they're calling whatever, the anti-immigration thing. So on July 14th, they publicized an arrest and maybe an abuse of a Palestinian who was protesting, carrying a Palestinian flag in Whitechapel. And I don't think it really made much of a stink. So on July 18th, they did manage to get some riots going in Whitechapel. And it said it was following the tragic deaths of Bangladeshi students in Bangladesh and sparked chaos in the streets of London. A guy named Darren Grimes, not our friend Darren Grimes from Grimerica, but he tweeted, he's got like hundreds of thousands of followers. I forget what his story is, but he said, London riots have broken out because Bangladeshi students were killed in not Britain, but Bangladesh. Reports suggest it's outside of an office linked to a political party in Bangladesh. Tonight is the price of British multiculturalism. So they're tying that in, even though it's not this exact like white against Muslim thing that the other riots are pointing to. There was also on July 18th, a double-decker bus was set on fire in Leeds, and that got a lot of press. It looked to me like a very controlled situation. The bus wasn't close enough to buildings for them to catch on fire. People were throwing trash into it to make the fire bigger. That seemed like baloney. On July 23rd in Manchester, it was widely publicized, a picture of cops beating some, quote, Muslims of South Asian descent. Later, more of the image was shown, and it revealed that the people the cops were beating had been aggressive towards a female police officer. So this ambiguity is always really important to get both sides hating each other. So I don't know if you remember Anthony McLean. He was a guy who was shot in the back by a cop for absolutely no justifiable reason. And it was so unbelievable. It was so clear. No one could object to it. And that is probably why you definitely never heard of it anywhere but on this show, because it has to absolutely cause conflict and make the people who are pissed seem irrational. So that brings us to the most recent thing, which was July 29th. There was supposedly a stabbing at a Taylor Swift themed yoga party for children. I mean, okay. And the guy who did it was he was a 17-year-old. So they didn't want to say his name or his identity or anything. But apparently social media leaked that he was a Muslim immigrant, and this sparked all of these riots, supposedly. And so he was 6 days away from his 18th birthday, and the authorities made a decision to reveal his identity a few days early because he was the child of Rwandan immigrants, and he was born in Cardiff. So he wasn't actually a Muslim immigrant, but they had this whole thing about Rwanda. They had some swap programs, some like Liberia thing in Rwanda where the government of the UK spent 700 something million pounds to get illegal immigrants to relocate in Rwanda, and it ends up like 4 people went to Rwanda, but they swapped with some people entering Rwanda. So there's like a lot of like baggage around Rwanda. And the idea that this is supposed to make the rioters feel better is kind of surprising. But the whole upshot of all of that is that these dumb crackers went and uh, popped off without realizing that it wasn't a Muslim guy, it was an African guy, which I guess would have made them not be mad. Anyway, I'm not convinced there was that much there was any kind of organic rioting. I'm not convinced of that. So, okay. So those are the things that were happening, and the policy goals are definitely going to be increased surveillance and censorship. Let's see what exactly Kit Knightley said. Further limit social media free speech, normalize constant surveillance. And there is a big push for facial recognition technology going on right now over there. So those are the policy goals, and they're using these riots to foster those, of course. And Keir Starmer immediately started making speeches to that effect. He was criticized for only targeting the far right. He's like, oh no, everybody's going to get censored now. There's just headline after headline that Kit Knightley demonstrates that, like, from the UK, from the US, talking about how social media misinformation created these riots. Somebody needs to control social media. Elon Musk is the champion of free speech, but that's a problem, which Kit points out, it validates Elon Musk's ridiculous, persona. So this guy, Keir Starmer, I mean, he is an outspoken advocate of out of control social spending, basically, but he's just another welfare warfare superstate guy. He's totally in favor of Ukraine spending there for military Israel in support of that. So he's just another one of the same guys. But this idea of using political violence, domestic violence, to justify these policies of surveillance and censorship and taking it to another level, because we're obviously already surveilled and censored. This is taking it to a whole nother level. And this is the theme that we've been talking about for a couple of months now, since May, since that Slovakian prime minister was shot 5 times at point blank range. And just a couple of weeks later tells us, whatever, it's not that guy's fault. I'm not even pressing charges, and he was a big champion of media suppression law. And I said, I actually predicted at the time, like, I wouldn't be surprised if we had some political violence here and they used that for the same purpose. And I feel like the alleged assassination attempt against Trump is going to be used for that purpose. Maybe not right now, but at some point, it'll definitely be put in the hopper for that. So I see that Australia just raised their threat level, even though there are no riots there. They said that they have had increasing numbers of incidents. We talked about one where there was a live streamed mosque service and someone went and I think killed people. I have to refresh my memory on that one. But what's happened, let's see what they say in Australia. They believe that there's going to be a greater than 50% chance of an attack on home soil over the next 12 months. We have that same thing. If you look at that FBI memo that talks about how they're going to target traditional Catholics, it's supposed to happen before the election. They articulate what they're worried about. Domestic extremism is being driven by a broader range of grievances than before. While some recent cases appear to be motivated by extreme religious ideology, others are driven by nationalist and racist beliefs. They're saying perpetrators have been as young as 14, and the oldest of their recent incidents was 21. So there, it's all about young people. Uh, yeah, it says in April, a Christian leader, oh, it was a Christian leader, was stabbed by a teenager during a live stream at a church. Led to a riot outside the church. Oh, I forgot. Maybe it was Orthodox now that I think about it. He said, the head of security of Australia, whatever, said he doesn't believe that this is that he's not afraid because of stuff that's happening in the Middle East. However, they worry that an escalation of the conflict in the Middle East, especially in southern Lebanon, which is getting a lot of press right now, would aggravate tensions in Australia. So that goes to the Darren Grimes comment that this is the price of globalization. Riots leap across the ocean, because people have all these sympathies to other places. I can't really understand why Bangladeshi protests would kill other Bangladeshis in London, regardless of how mad they are. Like, who are they actually attacking or fighting against? I don't know. Okay. So let's see. Oh, Miri, her Substack is like Miri's Massive Missives, I think. So she wrote to her town and it said, "You wish to clamp down upon our civil liberties." This is in her Substack. "And personal freedoms, bringing in a range of anti-democratic and illiberal measures such as facial recognition and digital ID, as well as limiting our rights to peacefully gather and protest and to freely share our views and opinions online. You can't simply impose these measures without a reason, so riots and the supposed threat of the far right have been largely manufactured, then wildly exaggerated and amplified by politicians and the press in order to give governmental bodies an excuse to introduce measures the populace would otherwise never have accepted." Very well put, Miri. I would love to talk to her. So if any of y'all know her, she has an open invitation onto my show. She is absolutely too legit to quit. All right, Keir is yucky. I don't like him. He said, let's see. He was pledging to counter the far right with a new police division, increased use of surveillance and facial recognition technology to limit the movements of the far right. He said, "Let me say to large social media companies and those who run them, violent disorder clearly whipped up online. That is also a crime. It's happening on your premises, and the law must be upheld everywhere." By the way, it was a weird coincidence that this kid was turning 18 6 days before. Oh, and Miri pointed out in one of her articles that he was an actor. That kid was an actor. He was like in a UNICEF ad. The person who went and attacked the kids. 3 little girls supposedly died in this Taylor Swift thing. And this guy was whatever. He was in ads. Yeah, so Kit is concerned that this kind of stuff is going to affect anti-lockdown protests, everything. Obviously, it's similar to what's happening here. But it's also a crackdown on digital free speech as well as in real life. Anyway. Okay. So that's what's happening there. I think the riots are being fomented and overblown. Fear is stoked by the police, by the media, and the goal is a massive increase in surveillance and censorship. This is all being ushered in. And I remember when Obama was president, I was like, he's the surveillance president, and the next guy's going to be the censorship president. And that was absolutely true. This guy seems to be a lot of both. And, they don't have the Bill of Rights. If you ever watch these British crime shows, like, they don't seem to have rights. That's probably just TV, but they are, we actually have the Bill of Rights. We can fight this stuff somewhat, but it gets trampled night and day anyway. So I do feel like this stuff is moving towards us. So I looked into what was happening in Bangladesh, and it seemed kind of weird. What was happening in Bangladesh is a massive amount of student protests were up in arms because there was a law change. There was a little flip-flopping. You don't need all the blow by blow, but there had been a law. There are laws in Bangladesh about favoritism to get government jobs. There's a small amount for handicapped people indigenous people. I didn't know there were indigenous people in Bangladesh. I guess a lot of all the Muslim Indians moved into Bangladesh with the partition. So I guess maybe there are not a lot left behind or of indigenous people there, perhaps. Anyway, so they have some carve outs, but 30% of government jobs were slated for the families of the people who fought in the 1971 War for Independence. And you think about that intergenerational advantage if those jobs are great jobs. Here, there are definitely quotas, like disproportionate quotas that I think are based on like race and that kind of thing. And our government jobs are good. Are they good enough to like run the country if you have them? I don't know about that, but it does seem like the prominent families have a lot of connections there at the top. Look, it was not very easy to get information, but it looks like they have like maybe 1.5 million government jobs, but they have a workforce of 75 million people. So this just doesn't seem like that huge a deal. And when the students got what they wanted, which was that policy to be overturned, they didn't stop protesting. So I was like, why would they care that much about that particular thing? Students are so malleable. We have that here with the I know JJ from the UK is like the Palestinian protests are not AstroTurf, but I feel like a lot of the stuff that was going on those university campuses were set up. There were pictures that looked staged. These guys, similarly, the Bangladesh students wanted the university, the leaders of the universities to step down, just like ours, that happened here. Anyway, so they were calling for a whole new government and they got it. So and it just seemed like such a minor reason, like such an artificial reason. And I do believe it was. And I'll tell you, so the prime minister, Sheikh Hasina, a woman, not only stepped down, but fled the country on August 5th. And at first I thought maybe it had been like drummed up as a military coup because the general in charge of the military took over in her stead. He was her, let's see, he was married. Let's see. He was related to her somehow. Let's see. His father-in-law was the prime minister's uncle, and his wife is her cousin. So that's what I was thinking. Like these laws, maybe they do like really promote certain families. That would not surprise me because I think that culturally that isn't unheard of, especially when you have a caste system like in India, where the origin of a lot of these people were. So I was like, oh, maybe it's a military coup because this guy is taking over. Then I heard that parliament dissolved. Then, as I was just about to come to air, I saw this headline: Nobel laureate Yunus accepts call to lead Bangladesh's interim government. So this 84-year-old guy, he won the Nobel Prize for something I definitely smell a rat over. Yunus, an economist who won the Nobel Prize in 2006 for establishing the microcredit institution Grameen Bank, has been called the, quote, banker to the poor for helping to lift millions of people in Bangladesh out of poverty through small loans. I actually question that stat that it did lift millions of people. He is considered the father of this microfinancing. I have always been skeptical of microfinancing, banking the poor. Banking isn't a virtue. Like being banked is not a virtue. And the bank, there was an estimate that they charge the poor 23% interest, which is roughly the same as the inflation rate. So that sounds like zero nominal interest to us. But if the inflation rate is 23% and they have high unemployment, which is also what I read, it is unlikely that wages are going to keep up with inflation. So if you have borrowed money that you have to pay back in the future and it's growing at the inflation rate, 23%, which means it's going to double in like 3 years, unless you've made that money work harder for you than the rate of inflation, which is not easy from the bottom, then you are worse off than you started. I'm not saying that's what happened, but some people say maybe that is how it worked. And he was under investigation. Now, he kept saying no government is going to be accepted other than the one chosen by the students. So get the military guy out of there. What do the students want? Oh my gosh, they want me. I'm so excited. I really feel good about that. Well, he's been leading this protest all along. And as I dug into this microfinancing thing, and I thought it was like a little, I always think it's fishy, ends up that he was investigated for this. There were some allegations that they were exploiting the poor. He came out against bankers using this as a way to exploit the poor, but he was investigated for, let's see, not only that. It says allegations against Eunice and Grameen were made in a context where some people began to question the effectiveness of microfinance, prompted by the actions of some for-profit microfinance institutions in India and Mexico. Coercion, peer pressure, and physical harassment were reportedly used as loan repayment practices in some specific MFIs. Commercialization of microcredit prompted Eunice to state that he never imagined that one day microcredit would give rise to its own breed of loan sharks. What do you think it was? What do you think banking is, buddy? Huh? Anyway, I found that he has had beef with this chick, Sheikh Haneen, or whatever her name is. I should probably know her name. It's a little unprofessional to call her whatever. Snappy, snap. See, now you got to wait for it. Sheikh Hasina. He has had beef with her since 2007, which is actually, I think, before the latest, this round of accusations was like 2011. I saw he's had beef with her all that time. And now he, I would say, single-handedly got her run out of the country on a rail, even though she won the last election. She's been sitting there for a long time. And I think she's like the daughter of one of these pioneering, like the father of the Bangladeshi country, whatever. And now he's got her job. Because I was wondering, he's 84. What is he messing around with this stuff for? I wonder. I mean, I don't know, but it's just kind of weird. So, but those protests are making people kill each other in Whitechapel, England, because globalism, because immigration. I mean, it looks drummed up to moi. Okay, well, let's see. I'm going to finish one more like international story, and then I'm going to take some comments, and then we're going to talk about Tim Walz. You may have heard me mention his name last week, even though I had no freaking idea who he was, but he was in a story that was widely covered. You might remember. Anyway, let's just, Iranian retaliation for killing the Hamas guy who was over there. We've been hearing about it for days, the stuff in Lebanon, Hezbollah. I have my doubts about that Iran. I suspect that a lot of those guys are controlled opposition. So maybe they gave the Hamas guy up. I have absolutely no idea, but people are on high alert. I have no particular observation about that. It's scary, but the longer it goes on, the more they bluster. I mean, I'm not going to say stand down, but I'm just saying that seems like it's the idea of it that's being weaponized as we speak. And I just wondered if it would look like Biden couldn't handle it, and that would be a way for Kamala to step in. But Byron makes a good point. She doesn't want to be the incumbent when she's got to campaign. So that might happen later on. But I do feel like, why waste an opportunity for Biden to be the hero and, ensure Kamala the presidency unless she actually wins? All right. So let's get to some comments, and then we talk about Tim. All right. So again, Bobby is handing me the comments so that I'm not actually chit-chatting, because it, wastes listener time when I'm reading. Okay. Monica, domestic violence is suddenly a big deal here in Australia too. All of a sudden, quote, they care. Now, we're talking like they call it domestic terrorism here. Domestic violence is when you beat your wife. But like, you're talking, I think, about like political violence, domestic terrorism, if you wouldn't mind clarifying, Stella. Frightening Me says, I saw AJ, Alex Jones, talk about it years ago. Some half German, Japanese nobility guy. Yes. I remember that. I know that story of that guy. He thought brown people would be easier to control, so he wanted to replace the Europeans. I thought his idea was that he felt resentful because he wanted to be German, but he looked Japanese and he could not be treated that way. So it was kind of like his revenge. I remember that. I wish I could remember his name. I don't know a lot about it, but I have read that story. If somebody could Google that real quick and let me know what the name of that Japanese guy was, so people, Japanese German guy. All right, Monica, Stella says, on April 15th, 2024, a priest was stabbed during a live streamed sermon at Christ the Good Shepherd Church in Wakeley, Sydney, Australia. A 16-year-old male stabbed Bishop Mari Emmanuel. Yes, thank you. And I remember you were trying to give me that information back then, Stella, and for some reason your comments were not showing up in the feed, which I thought was curious. So whipped cream from a cow says fear of war more efficient as a tool than actual war. Yes, rumors of war are just as good, if not better. I mean, I was thinking that they wouldn't need to have wars anymore, but what they're doing in the Philippines actually is what's worrying me in that regard. And I do think that really all comes down to chips, just semiconductors and AI and the really, really sophisticated supercomputers that I think that's where the competition gets real globally. Like, everybody's kind of cooperating and they probably are, but like there are probably too many guys or two organizations who want to control the future of, as intelligent as these computers can get or as powerful. I don't think the AI is so much as just the sheer power of what they can do. You can call it AI if you want, but the processing capacity is mind-boggling, and those chips are valuable. And I think that they probably just can't produce them fast enough. Or in any case, they don't want the other guy to have it. Anyway. All right. Well, I can't find my answer to the I'm going to look it up. I just want his name. Yeah. Is it Chiyun Sugihara? Could it be Chiyune Sugihara? No, I don't think so. That's really annoying to me. Oh well. What are you going to do? Okay. Joe Not a Fed. Hi, Joe. Says Iran proving again that a ticking clock is an especially sinister form of torture. Very well put, Joe Not a Fed. Okay, I am going to carry on. Oh, here you go. Here you go. Yes, writing me. Woohoo. Kudenhova Kalergi was his name. I took Japanese for a year when I was in college. And I think if it spelled like a G, it would be G. So Kalergi. Kudenhova Kalergi. Oh, geez, I can't read your A Beater World spool. I can't read your handle here, but he says a huge chip factory is coming to Central New York very soon. Billions of dollars. All right. So thank you very much. That was very interesting. I love the little tidbits. Like, we'll look into that guy's backstory and guarantee he's, I don't know, working for the man, the guy who invented that immigration thing. All right. So let's talk about Timothy James Walz. And first of all, I got to check on something. I have to ask a real question. Okay, never mind. Okay, this friggin' guy. Okay, Tim Walz, do you know why I talked about him last week? because he was the guy who basically started the meme that Republicans are weird. They're weird. So that's why I remember reading his name. Like, I don't know, Tim Walz said this, and then all of a sudden, and when I did that show, I was like, wow, like, so Stella mentioned it to me. So obviously it's like percolated to Australia in a week. I heard it on the news. I read it in the Wall Street Journal. There was a whole article about it in the New York Times, like all in a day. So that was this guy's entree into the world, because I, for one, absolutely never heard of this guy. So he's the governor of Minnesota. I don't know if I'm have all these things, but he's definitely super, super liberal. That's his thing. He was voted most liberal, but at the same time, like one of few Democrats from Minnesota. It says Timothy James Walz, born in 1964. Gosh, he is not aging well, is an American politician, former U.S. Army non-commissioned officer, and retired educator. So he was a high school teacher and coach. I think his wife is a high school teacher, who served as the 41st governor of Minnesota since 2019. A member of the Democratic Party, he's presumptive nominee for vice president in 2024 under Kamala. He was a member of the House of Representatives from 2007 to 2019. So he was a congressman for a long time, which means he was elected many times. So he's got to be popular in Minnesota. He represents their first congressional district. He got a DWI in 1995 and quit drinking forever after that. So you got to admire that guy. He was the high school teacher and coach. He was the advisor to the Gay Straight Alliance at the school in 1999. A couple of other things I noticed that he studied in China briefly, and he coordinated a program with China. But I didn't see too many red flags about this guy at all. But there was a little bit of a Kerry-like controversy surrounding him, and he was high level, if not actually the highest, in the campaign for Kerry to become president. And there was a lot of funny business that year. So he may know where bodies are buried. I don't know. But Kerry also had that controversy about like overstating his military service, if you will recall. I mean, who doesn't, though, from that crowd, huh? Am I right? So this Wikipedia says Walz served in the National Guard for 24 years after enlisting in 1981. He was deployed post 9/11 for half a year to support Operation Enduring Freedom in Europe. He attained the rank of Command Sergeant Major near the end of his service, but retired as a Master Sergeant in 2005 for benefit purposes because he did not complete coursework at the U.S. Army Sergeant's Major Academy. That's what Wiki says. And then it also says, upon his swearing in, Walz became the highest ranking retired enlisted soldier ever to serve in Congress, as well as only the fourth Democrat DFLer to represent his district. However, there are soldiers who, I don't know what the occasion was for them to write this, but they wrote a kind of McCain-like expose. I don't know if you remember all the military guys who were totally against McCain, thought that his claim to fame was that he was this heroic POW, and they said that he just rolled over immediately. He was cooperating. Like, it was really, really bad what they were saying. And of course, his father, McCain's father, did the USS Liberty. So you gotta, that's no surprise that he's not the man. Anyway, what these guys are saying, these soldiers have said, is in early 2005, a warning order was issued to the 1st 125th, I don't know how to say it, it's 1-125th Field Artillery Battalion, which included the position Walz was serving in, to prepare to be mobilized for active duty for a deployment to Iraq. That was in 2005. On May 16th, 2005, after this was issued, Walz quit, leaving that battalion and its soldiers hanging without its senior non-commissioned officer as the battalion prepared for war. His excuse to other leaders was that he needed to retire in order to run for Congress. That is false. According to a Department of Defense directive, he could have run and requested permission from the Secretary of Defense before entering active duty, as many reservists have. If he had retired normally and respectfully, You would think he would have ensured his retirement documents were correctly filled out and signed, and that he would have ensured he was reduced to Master Sergeant for dropping out of the academy. Instead, he waited for the paperwork to catch up to him. His official retirement document states, soldier not available for signature. It says his battalion was deployed for 22 months from 06 to 07. During that time, they were restricted by Army regulations and could not speak out against a candidate for office. In November 06, he was elected to Congress. He claims to be the highest ranking enlisted service member ever to serve. Even though he was conditionally promoted, he quit before his obligations were met, so he was reduced to Master Sergeant for retirement. He served at the rank, but was never qualified at the rank and will receive retirement benefits one rank below. On November 1st, Tom Hagen, an Iraq War veteran, wrote a letter to the editor of the Winona Daily News. Here's a few sentences from the letter. Quote, but even more disturbing is the fact that Walz quickly retired after learning that his unit, Southern Minnesota's 125 FA Battalion, would be sent to Iraq. For Tim Walz to abandon his fellow soldiers and quit when they needed experienced leadership is most disheartening. Most is disheartening. Okay, so there is a debunking out there. He has an answer to all of this. I'm not here to tell you whether it's true or false. I'm here to bring up what you might not otherwise hear. I don't know if what they're saying is that he was a coward and maybe wanted to run for Congress in order to avoid that service without it looking like he just was quitting. I really don't know anything about the guy, but if they want to spring somebody without a national presence on us, and he's got that backstory of being this, if the soldier thing is his number one claim to fame, might be worth considering that. I put it in the show notes. Oh, and one other thing that happened of note today was there was a ruling by a court that Google was a monopoly. And it is true. It is actually true that the Department of Justice is pursuing a lot of antitrust cases for some reason. And it started with Trump, but it's continuing under Biden. I really don't know why. I always suspect something. I don't know what it is, though. It says legal scholars expect this decision to influence government antitrust lawsuits against the other tech giants. All of those investigations conducted by the Federal Trade Commission and the Justice Department began during the Trump administration and have ramped up under President Biden. So the headline was Google's antitrust loss set to reshape search and mobile industries. End of paid search engine placement would affect companies including Microsoft, Apple, and Samsung. The article reads, the government argued that by paying billions of dollars to be the automatic search engine on consumer devices, Google had denied its competitors the opportunity to build the scale required to compete with its search engine. Instead, Google collected more data about consumers that it used to make its search engine better and more dominant. Okay, so I'm always wondering what the angle is, right? And when they come in and they break something up or they call it a monopoly and they make it change its business, I think that it benefits them. That it wouldn't happen at this time if Google didn't get what it needed out of its position. And that perhaps by creating a new regulatory environment, maybe it brings in Bing or even DuckDuckGo, maybe it brings in other search engines, but nothing that isn't already captured. So like startups really have a very hard time in such a mature industry. But what if Google used that dominant position, as it said, to make its search engine better, to educate its AI so much better, have such an advantage in AI that it doesn't matter whether it's a search engine or not? Because have you noticed that when you Google stuff now, instead of like Google summary, it says AI summary? And AI, unless you have AGI, which is artificial general intelligence, but if you have just AI or generative AI, it's obviously, I think it's obvious if you're using it, it's a curation, it's a search and curation function. It's just searching and gathering. It's just like the Google summary that was there already. So now, if they've had the advantage of educating their AI for search and curation purposes by having this dominant position for decades, I feel like they, maybe it makes the search stuff Wild West, and these guys just rise above that. Maybe it makes searches worse and make their AI better. I don't know, but I'm always looking for the angle, because at that level, I think things are not highly controlled. So, I mean, are highly controlled. And I look at like the Danny Casolaro stuff, which is I'm going to read the next installment of that on Thursday at this time. When you look at that stuff, you see when the judge did rule correctly, he got dismissed immediately. Like he was no longer a judge. I mean, and a lot of people were killed. Like, I don't know about, Google's rubbing people out, but I'm just saying, I don't trust that this is like some blow to Google. I just don't trust it. Okay. So I had a couple of listener choice clips today. So I'm going to play a couple of things that I did not dig out. And let's see how I'm going to do this. All right. So here's one clip that we can you guys can keep talking about. I may be able to comment, I may not, but here's one clip. So, well, I think it speaks for itself, but just so you know, my take on this is things are either banned or mandated. Like that is the definition of totalitarianism, in my opinion. And I've seen it before. And I just, it makes me crazy. Here's a great example of that, but stay tuned because I've got something else for you.
Tensions boiled over tonight at the Nassau legislature when at least one person was arrested. The chaos came during a heated discussion about the county's Mask Transparency Act. The measure makes it illegal to wear a mask in public unless it's for the person's health, religion, or celebratory purposes. A similar state law had been on the books prior to the COVID pandemic.
This law endangers my life. This law endangers the lives of many people.
Bridget Jones is immunocompromised and came from Harlem to speak against the measure.
Criminalizing a tool that literally is PPE. It's a mobility aid. It saves lives.
The county legislature passed the bill along party lines. All 12 Republicans voted in favor. All 7 Democrats abstained. Supporters say it prevents people from committing crimes or acts of violence while hiding behind a mask.
This bill addresses the urgent need to mitigate potential threats to the community's safety and to ensure accountability amongst protesters.
Police will determine if a mask is being worn for legitimate purposes. Opponents say that could lead to discrimination.
Black and brown residents in Nassau County are overly targeted, more so than white people. And so we see that this mask ban will only exacerbate that issue.
Did you hear what that woman said when she was at the podium? She said it will help to hold protesters accountable. I have never heard anyone say that before. And it's what I thought years ago when they started pushing those cop cams. And this was before anyone was protesting anything. It was a very long time ago. And I remember saying, well, now they're just going to see you. Like, how is that? That is, they should have to have probable cause for something like that, because that is a First Amendment right. You should not be cataloged. Of course they do, but she's actually saying that's the intended purpose. Now, to me, that would make it unconstitutional. However, that's local. And I think that local stuff shouldn't, like, I know the 14th Amendment says that the Constitution applies to that stuff, but I actually am in favor of local communities being able to police themselves the way they want to. The police powers are reserved to the states. And I would say the states should reserve them to the localities. Plus that chick, Bridget Jones, real name, she was saying that it banned her wearing that, but she said she was sick, immunocompromised. I would think a big mask like that would not be good for her, but whatever. She thinks it's good for her. I think they said they carved out religion, health, and celebratory reasons. Of course, is health your actual health or your perceived health? Like, I'm still trying to get, if you cannot believe this, vaccine exemptions for my kids. And I know I'm doing it for my personal beliefs, my religious beliefs, my knowledge about health, but I have to get a health provider to to put his reputation on the line, that it's a health issue. It's very difficult. And so when they say it's for health exceptions, you're going to have to get somebody that they have already eliminated, anybody in the medical system who would not go along with whatever the recommendation is. You know what I mean? Anyway, but maybe the worm is turning. So I'm going to leave you with a little comic relief and with a guy I really like.
I miss COVID.
I know. Dude, you know what I knew? There was trouble when anyone that came to our country didn't have to get a vaccine. And I go, if you're telling me I can't go to work, but everyone coming in doesn't have to get one, I go,
well, once we found out when Fauci said, okay, I'm sorry, but if you've had 2 boosters and 2 vaccines, you can get and give COVID to another guy who's had 5 vaccines and 4 boosters. What's the difference between a vaccine and a booster? I don't know. Just more vaccine, but booster sounds better. Anyway, a guy with 25 vaccines would get and give COVID to another guy with 25 vaccines. That's why I'm introducing the daily COVID shot. Every day you get a shot. By the time you get to your car, you got no immunity. But it's a beautiful 39 seconds.